You may not actually think of the Audi A3 as a true volume selling model, but believe it or not, over 3 or 4 generations and 2 or 3 decades, Audi has actually sold 56,000 A3s and its derivatives in this market. So that makes it a pretty important car for that brand in Australia. Of course, like any conventionally packaged car, it's facing pressure from the global onslaught that is the SUV. And that makes it interesting, especially as conventional hatchbacks and sedans are now such an endangered species. This video is going to be split into chapters, and we'll put the time codes over here so that you can jump to the part that interests you most. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon so that we can keep you up to date with future videos. And the written test of this car and that car will be on the CarsGuide website, so check that out too. The new Audi A3 comes in 2 body styles. There's the 5-door hatchback, which Audi calls Sportback, and there's a conventional sedan. Now, this is the higher trim level, the higher spec model. This is the 40 TFSI. But really, it's the more conventional car. It's got a 2-litre turbocharged engine and Audi's all-wheel drive quattro system. But perhaps more technically interesting is the base model, the entry-level car. This one, the 35 TFSI, which loses quattro all-wheel drive, but it does gain a 1.5-litre turbocharged engine and a mild hybrid driveline. So that's a 48-volt battery with a belt-driven starter motor alternator that gives the car a little bit more urge when you need it and can also recoup some power when you're coasting to a stop. This car's all about economy. Both engines and drivelines are available in both body shells, and this car in Sportback, which is the cheapest version, is just under $47,000. And that car in sedan form with the big engine is $56,000. So they're not cheap, but you do get a lot of kit for your money. You get alloy wheels, you get Audi's really clever virtual cockpit, you get digital radio, you get full connectivity. And for all the details on that, you can check out again the written road test on carsguide.com.au. Audi style gurus have always had a field day with the interiors of their cars, and this one is no different. There's been a clear effort to make a very complex car look and feel simple to operate, but at the same time, they haven't backed away from that sense of style. Even things like these high-mounted air vents, for some reason, remind me of a Lamborghini, and that can't be a bad thing. This is just a classy place to sit, and it's clever. Even things like this shift-by-wire gear selector now are clever because it introduces new technology to the car, but it relies on old muscle memory on my part, so it works very seamlessly. The steering wheel is just beautiful, and all the touch points are quality and high end. And even the way the switch gear works, it's got a very precise clunk to it when you flick the switch. That all speaks of real attention to detail, and at the same time, it never looks or feels like it's trying too hard. Like I said, classy. In terms of how it fits people and their gear, the A3 scores pretty well given its external dimensions. The rear seat legroom is okay, but not overly generous. But let's be honest, it'll be children and teddy bears that occupy these seats, and if the passengers in the back are grown-ups, they'll only be there for short periods. Boot space depends on the specification you're dealing with. The 2-wheel drive sedan has 425 litres of luggage space, the 4-wheel drive version 390 litres. In the hatch, the 2-wheel drive has 380 litres with the seat in place and 1200 litres with the seat folded flat. The corresponding figures for the 4-wheel drive hatch are 325 and 1145 litres. The rear seat in either folds 40-20-40, and the up-spec model has extra luggage nets and 12-volt sockets around the cabin. The media interface is good with a large clear touchscreen, and that customisable dashboard remains a real highlight of the car. It enables you to show the info that's most important right now, and that's a safety and convenience issue. As I said before, if, like me, you're a bit of a closet propeller head, You will find the driveline of the base model A3 the more interesting of the two. It's a 1.5 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder drive in the front wheels, but it's got that mild hybrid element, which is the 48-volt battery driving the starter motor / alternator. Now what happens is, as you slow down for a red light, the engine will stop, it'll coast. And that's when the starter motor alternator kicks in and starts regenerating or harvesting power that would have been lost as braking. When you go to take off again, that belt can drive the actual engine and get it going, as well as give you a little boost of anything up to 9 kilowatts and 50 Newton meters, which is not insignificant. Now, it might be less technically interesting, but this is the big hitter. This is 140 kilowatts, 320 Newton meters, turbocharged, 4-cylinder, 2 litre. It's kind of a big engine by today's standards, as everyone else is downsizing, but Audi has wisely stuck with the full-fat version for us. And we get the hot weather tune these days in the A3 and S3, which we didn't used to get. This car has quattro all-wheel drive, but it's not quattro as you might understand it in some of Audi's bigger cars. This is the transverse engine version of quattro, which means that fundamentally this car behaves like a front-wheel drive car. It's only when the road conditions or the driver inputs dictate that some of the torque is sent to the back wheels. When that happens, there's a multi-plate clutch on the back axle, and that will begin to engage and send torque to the rear wheels as well as the fronts. But for economy's sake, most of the time, this behaves like a front-wheel drive car, but it has got a lot of grip at the same time. So I've been driving the 35 TFSI for a while now, and I'm ready to tackle the elephant in the room. Exactly what does a fairly hefty car like this perform like with a 1.5 litre engine? Well, actually a whole lot better than you'd imagine. It's a really smooth, really fizzy, bubbly, typical little Audi engine, but it's got way more grunt than you'd ever expect it to. Now, whether that's because the hybrid system's helping push me up the hills or what, I don't know. If it is, it's so seamless that I can't feel it. So it's kind of transparent technology, but it seems to really do the job. The gearbox clearly helps. The 7-speed dual clutch does a fine job of making sure you're in the right gear. It's really responsive. It's lightning fast on the shifts. And of course, it can sort of second guess where you need to be in terms of ratio. It's almost like it's got, you know, it can see the road ahead and knows when you're about to accelerate or something. It's almost prescient. It's that good. And the other thing I really love about this A3 platform is that there's a fantastic distinction between what all the bits of the chassis are doing. You can feel the suspension working, you know the steering's on your side, everything seems to sort of have the right amount of weight to it. The only thing you don't get with this particular model are the adjustable drive modes, but really, you know, the basic setup, the ride handling compromise with the standard settings is so good, you won't miss the fact that it doesn't have drive modes. In fact, calling it a compromise at all is really selling it short. It's exactly how I would have set it up myself, and I'm no engineer, but I kind of know what works in cars, and this works, trust me. Now we're in the 40 TFSI, and if the 1.5 litre engine is impressive, then you better believe the 2 litre is even better. This actually feels quite perky. Where the 35 TFSI is more than adequate, it's still not a particularly fast car. It just has all its bases covered. Whereas this thing actually feels pretty darn perky. And if you flick the gearbox down a couple and get on it, man, it goes. I mean, for 140 kilowatts, you'd swear it was more. It's not exactly as quick as the hottest hot hatches around, but I tell you what, it's not far off it. And again, like the 35, the chassis is just brilliant. I particularly like the driver setting the auto mode, because that means that the car will sort of read what's going on in terms of your inputs and in terms of what grip it's got. And it'll tailor the dampers to where they should be. It'll make sure the gear shift points are where they should be, and it'll add a little bit of weight to the steering. Personally, I think in dynamic, the steering takes on a little more weight than it needs to. I don't think it requires extra weight because it's got so much feel to start with. But like all these things, when you have to differentiate the different modes, that's what you've got to resort to. That said, at least the modes in this do actually what they say on the box. Comfort is a softer setting all round than dynamic, and efficiency is another mode that basically softens off the throttle, so that even though you might think you're giving it plenty of welly, you're actually not, and you're saving a little bit of fuel. Personally, I wouldn't use that one very much at all. The outright performance of the 40 TFSI isn't going to worry a committed hot hatch. The current batch of hot hatches are faster, but that's not this car's real role in life. I mean, at the price and with its marketing and its prestige badge, it's got to be more than just fast. It's got to be refined and it's got to be sophisticated. And in that sense, it's got most hot hatches absolutely kicked to bits. It's a much more rounded, more comfortable package, and really you can feel where the money's gone, and that's really saying something. When you're paying all that money and a lot of it's for the badge, you better believe that it's important that it feels the way you expect it to, and that's where I think Audi knows its market really well. It understands its customers and it knows how to make the cars that they want, and this is one of them. The bigger 2-litre engine in the 40 TFSI is obviously going to use more fuel than its little brother, but as well as more engine capacity, it also has the extra mass and friction of the quattro all-wheel drive system, as well as missing out on the mild hybrid function. As such, it emerges with an official combined figure of 6.7 litres per 100 kilometres, probably about right for the competition. Meantime, given that it's all about efficiency, the 35 TFSI claims an official fuel consumption number of just 5 litres per 100 kilometres. At highway speeds with a steady throttle, we even saw the short-term average dip into the 4s. Either way, this is a fuel sipper, and it's drive lines like this one that will ultimately kill off diesel engines in passenger cars. Now, safety has always been an Audi priority, and in fact, we take it as a given now. We wouldn't buy a car that wasn't a 5-star ANCAP performer, and this car is a 5-star performer. But its party trick is in the front seat there. It's called a centre front airbag, and in a collision, it inflates to separate the driver and the front seat passenger. Head clashes in a side impact is a big cause of injury and fatality. And this car, although we'll be seeing a lot more of that tech, at the moment, this car is one of the more affordable vehicles on the road that has that feature. And there's more. There's the full suite of driver aids in the new A3, including autonomous braking, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, lane keep assist, and plenty more. The only thing we reckon is missing is adaptive cruise control, which, strangely, costs more to option on the 40 TFSI than the 35. It's all about the optional packages Audi offers, but it still seems odd. The good news is Audi has joined the rest of the civilised car making world by now offering 5 years unlimited kilometre warranty on all its new cars sold after January 1 this year. That's up from 3 years. So that's good news. That said, it still only really brings them into step with everyone else. It's by no means a marketing edge. In terms of ownership costs, the news is also good. This car requires servicing every 15,000 kilometres or 12 months, whichever comes first. And when you buy the thing, you have the option to purchase a 5-year fixed price servicing contract for $2,250. And to me, that sounds like a dead set bargain. Both versions of the Audi A3 have some important technological differences under the skin, and yet they both have some really strong similarities in the way they drive and feel, and the way both of them absolutely nail their design brief. I'm kind of attracted to the geeky, techie 1.5 version with its hybrid driveline, but the Hellraiser in me loves the 2-litre version with its all-wheel drive grip. It's just a really good little performance car. But you know what? The whole thing raises one really interesting question for me, and that is, what would happen, or what would have happened, if Audi had put the hybrid driveline with the 2-litre turbo and made a real fire breather, and left the 1.5 just as it is without the hybrid, and maybe cut a few $1,000s off the price tag, making it even cheaper. It's an interesting concept. Of course, Audi's marketing department is populated by people a lot smarter than I am, so I'll just work with what I've got. And on that basis, I'm going to give the A3 range a solid 7 out of 10.